Welcome to the Minnesota Black Robe Regiment channel. Today I'm humbled and honored to have Josh Swedlund here from the Belle Plaine area. He is running for governor in 2022. Got the right date, yeah, 2022. And he is going to mount what I believe will be a formidable campaign against Governor Walz. And today may be one of two or three different conversations that we have, but today I want to introduce you to him so that you can get to know him because he is active in the patriotic movement here in Minnesota. He's been to several rallies and taken part in them. He was at the Thanksgiving Day rally in front of the People's Mansion in St. Paul, the building that we provide so graciously for whoever the elected servant sitting as governor is. And he's hoping to be the next body to fill that vacancy that hopefully comes up here very soon. So Josh, tell us a little bit about yourself, how old you are, where you're from, and who you are. Not what you do, but who you are.
Well, born and raised in Minnesota. I grew up and graduated from Waconia. Shortly after that, moved out to the Belle Plaine area. I am a father, a businessman. The reason I decided that I wanted to do this and run for governor was I've seen so many businesses. My business takes care of a lot of other businesses in preventative maintenance. And I've seen so many of my customers over this last year. So that was a big motivator for me. And then the biggest part of it was our kids. I have a 6-year-old son, and seeing everything that they're going through, what's being taken away from them, I can't sit by and watch that anymore. And it's not the world that I want them to grow up in or inherit from us. So I just decided to do the biggest, boldest thing I could. And I'm lucky enough to be in a position where I can take this on and I have the free time to do it. So I decided to run for governor.
As we were building up to this today, just in the brief exchange that we had this morning, I had mentioned that I see you more as a statesman and less than a politician. And one of the reasons that I say that is because you're a boots on the ground kind of guy, and that's admirable to me, and that says a lot about who you are. And I think people who know more about what it is that you do, as far as what your career or your occupation is, if you will, might understand why. So tell us a little bit about the kind of entrepreneurial work that you do.
Well, I've owned several different businesses, but the main stable since I was 18 years old has been my company called Sewer Services. We're a wastewater vacuum trucking company. I'm the biggest pumping company in the state, and it's like I said, so many of my customers are small businesses, and I just want to be able to get out there and help people, and I don't want to have to wait until 2022 to do it. So right now I'm doing everything that I can to try to get out there, help all these groups that are out, organizing these rallies, putting together events, any of the businesses right now that are deciding to try to stay open or anything like that. I'm out there to support them. I don't want to wait 2 years. The state can't wait that long. So I'm out trying to do everything that I can right now to help everybody in every way that I can, even if it's just through motivating people.
Right. So I told you I'm not a gotcha guy, and this is not a gotcha, I promise. So I want people to understand what Josh right. does, okay? Josh pumps sewage for his livelihood is pumping sewage. Josh is not the quintessential politician of any state, but he may be particularly qualified to take over the governorship in Minnesota after the last 2 years. So I want people to understand this is a guy, you don't build a business like this without getting your hands dirty and being invested in hard work. And I can guarantee you, without even having asked him this, he's driven a truck and he's pumped sewage. Have you not?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, I've had a very dirty 20 years of work. Yes.
So I told you that wasn't a gotcha. So I
Yeah.
could have disappointed me and said, no, I just bought the business from somebody, and would have looked like an idiot. But
No.
wouldn't have been the first time.
Actually, third generation in it.
So you had mentioned you're seeing what's happening to clients, and probably oddly enough, in a business like yours, a lot of these clients aren't just an account receivable, they're friends, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I've been working with some of these people for 20 years. Some of them are friends that, are from the area that I know personally. But yeah, and you do develop that friendship or that relationship with customers when you work with them for that long. So it does get to be a little bit more personal than just business.
So you're watching friends struggle. You're watching friends, some of them lose their businesses. Just without giving out names, have you get any clients that you've lost because they've lost their businesses in the last 8 months?
Oh yeah, our restaurant business is down at least 50%. I mean, we're by far the biggest supplier to restaurants in what we do, and I think our business volume has probably dropped by 50% since this started, meaning those businesses are either out of business completely or are shut down for these periods of time that he makes them close.
Have you had any of the conversations with any of these business owners that have said, I managed to scrape by through the first round, I don't know what I'm going to do now?
Yes, this go around is going to crush many of them. Some of them barely made it by, through that first period, and at the capacity levels that they were limited to since he allowed them to reopen, they really haven't been able to get back on their feet, and to have to get closed again now, there's no way they're going to make it.
So how political, how old are you? Let's start with that.
I'm 44.
44. Okay. So how political has Josh been his entire life?
Not very. I mean, if you would have told me I'd be running for governor 6 months ago, I would have told you were crazy. It wasn't something that I had on my radar. It's just the circumstances of the year and the position that I happen to be in that made me decide to go for it. But no, I've never aspired to be a politician. Don't consider myself a politician. I just consider myself a businessman that thinks I can make a difference and help people here.
So one of the critiques that has been leveled at Donald Trump has been, well, he's not qualified, he's just a businessman. And then other people have then turned around and said, well, yeah, that's exactly why he's more qualified, because he's a businessman. He's run a business. He's, whatever the case might be. What particular asset or skill do you think, as a business owner who's been doing this for as long as you have, is going to help you, not just in a campaign, but to fill that office and be not pragmatically productive, but actually productive for the people of Minnesota?
Well, I think running a business and taking on that position, running the state, is going to be fairly similar. The business aspect of it, I think, really helps come into play. I mean, in order to run a business and be successful, you have to have common sense. You have to have foresight. From what I've noticed in our current government, that doesn't really seem to be a strong suit. You got to be able to manage and, deal with people. You got to be able to relate to your customers, which would be, relating to voters. And it really helps if you're able to communicate with people and establish an emotional connection, which I found is working very well, in the campaign aspect of things. So I think running a business and, taking on that leadership role in the state are going to be very similar. And I think all of the skills that I've picked up all these years running a business are going to all get utilized in that position.
How many people do you employ?
Right now I have 13.
13.
I've had up to, I think, 22 when I was the busiest, but right now 13.
All right. You manage all the day-to-day operations?
Yes.
Do you have an office manager, or are you the office manager?
No, actually, I have an office manager, and we are in the process of making that transition where she's going to start taking over all the daily operations. So I have more time to work on, this avenue. So.
And I know that it probably sounds like a strange question to ask, but I asked it because you said that you're the largest business of your type in the state of Minnesota.
As far as I know, yes.
Okay, so there may be somebody else out there, but you would probably know them.
Yeah.
Okay. And you employ at peak 22 or so, and right now with things being the way they are, you're at 13. So you also understand what it's like to have to make hard decisions. And in some degree, and this is where a good attorney—
Oh, absolutely.
This is where a good attorney would accuse me of leading the witness. To some degree, it's actually probably harder to make those hard decisions for someone like you, going from employing 22 to have to go down to 13. And so it's not like you're completely devoid of the idea of what it means to make a hard decision.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, there's hard decisions every day in business. That can come up in different aspects between us and a customer. It can come up with employees if you have to make cutbacks, or, if you have to let someone go. There's nothing I hate more than having to let someone go. But it is just one of those hard decisions you have to make sometimes.
So one of the critiques that's often leveled against business owners, especially by people on the left, and Josh, if you ever wonder why, you can always ask, but you will hear me refer to the left far more than you will hear me refer to liberals, because I think, especially in the state of Minnesota, there's a very clear line of distinction between classical liberalism and what has become progressive leftist Marxism in the state of Minnesota. A lot of the people on the left will say things like, well, business owners are greedy, they never have to make hard decisions, they never give up anything. And I would imagine, having owned the business for as long as you've had to make some pretty hard personal decisions about stuff as it relates to your business and how it affects your family. Would that be accurate?
Oh, absolutely. To say that a business owner is greedy, I would say the direct opposite. Successful business owner usually is the last one to get the paycheck. We put in the most hours. We're the ones, working on the holidays, so our employees don't have to. Most business owners, I'm not saying all, but most of us make, way more sacrifices than anybody else in the business. And yeah, everybody else gets paid before I do when things go bad. So I definitely would not say that we're greedy.
That was a softball I was waiting for you to, and you did a great job. I did that on purpose. No, because I feel the same way. I want people to understand what Josh is saying here is like at his max capacity, and we both have mentioned this now. We're talking 22 people on payroll. Right now he's at 13, and he's the largest that he's aware of in the state of Minnesota doing what he does, what his employees do. Josh is a small business owner, and he's running for governor. It's not like he's, sitting in an opulent mansion in the middle of the largest city in the state of Minnesota, looking out over his kingdom and making these decisions to end people's livelihood. If that sounds pointed, deal with it, because it is. He's a small business owner. He's had to cut down to 13 people. Not just this winter. I would imagine that's been happening over the course of the last several months.
Yes.
Yeah. And he's still invested in that business, and he's invested in a belief and a passion. And he's doing this on his own. And this is why I wanted to talk with him today, and why I want you guys to hear what he has to say. Because this isn't a whim. This is not going to increase his business. Nobody's going to see him running for governor and say, hey, come pump out my septic tank. And to some degree, being as bold and as vocal as it has been, and trust me, if you don't follow him on Facebook, you need to while you still can, because they will get rid of him. and so Josh, you need to branch out. You need to get whoever your PR person is, branch out. But they will get rid of him because he speaks truth. And that's a popular phrase right now. We need to speak truth to power. I don't even know what that means, but he speaks truth. He calls a spade. He sees it and he says it. And I can relate to that, because anybody who's gotten to know me knows I'm the same way. But the difference is he's actually at risk here, because as we know, when you powerfully proclaim a position when it comes to common sense and logic or philosophical political views, as a business owner, you stand to lose clients, and not just friends, but clients. And so before we go any further, I want you to understand this. Josh owns a small business. By any measure in the state of Minnesota, he falls well within the small business category. Any client he loses hurts. So Josh is dealing with the same pain and suffering that every other small business owner in the state of Minnesota is dealing with. And he's out here speaking, not just for himself, but for all of them. And he's willing to have conversations with people that aren't comfortable. Like, I've watched him engage with people on his Facebook. That's more than our current governor is doing. So go back for the first part of this, listen to everything that he said, and now listen very closely to how he answers these next questions. Josh, this is hard. This is a hard thing you're entering into. You said in one of our conversations, this public speaking thing was not you.
No, definitely not.
What in the core of who you are as a person would drive you? Okay, you've talked about seeing friends and clients lose businesses and be hurt by all of this. You've watched a couple of my videos. You know where I stand on the Constitution. What are you willing to do? What are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to give up by way of comfort to see us not restore, but to stand again as a state on the Constitution? And do you recognize that you, in putting yourself in this position, aren't going to be a ruler, but actually a servant?
Oh, I mean, the Constitution is the most important document ever written. I mean, we have to follow it. We have to uphold it. Without it, we don't have America. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to do that. I'm fully vested in this. You know, I started early, and hopefully, if I make this election, you know, that'll be 6 years that I've dedicated already to it. Um, you know, I'm giving up a lot of time with my family. I'm taking a big pay cut by doing this if I get elected. I'm definitely not doing it for popularity. I'm not doing it for money. I'm just doing it because I want to help people. I want to help businesses. I want to get our lives back in this state. I want to preserve our freedoms. And if I get in there and I'm not doing a good job, unlike this guy, I expect you guys to come in there and drag me out. I mean, I want to be in there. I want to do the right job. I know I I'm not going in there to do things my way. I know that to do this job right, I am representing the people. I am the people's voice condensed down into one person. The people are the boss. I'm not. That's their house. That's their property. I am strictly, you know, a servant to the people. So that's all very, very important to me. And as far as anything goes, you know, when I set my mind to something at any point in my life, I dial in and I stay dedicated, and I pretty much usually accomplish what I set out to get done. So.
All right, so I'm Joe Leftist, and I live in the area closest to the tallest buildings in the state of Minnesota. I've
Okay.
never dreamed of ever voting for any person who isn't affiliated with the Democrat Farmer Laborers Union of the state of Minnesota. And not only that, I have absolutely made it clear that I will never vote for another rich white guy the rest of my life, because it flies in the face of everything that I have ever believed that I now believe in. And I don't want to go betray those newfound or strongly held convictions. And I run into you on the street. What are you going to say to me that's going to possibly begin to make me to think differently and start to vote for you? How could you possibly represent me?
I guess I would have to start by. I guess I would have to start by talking to you and, you know, getting a little bit of information from you, finding out what your concerns are, you know, what you want to see change, what you're happy with, and address those issues with you specifically. I don't have a blanket statement on how I'm going to pull Democrats from the Democratic Party, but I definitely want to, you know, get out there, talk to people, find out what they are, and I'm really hoping that I can help close that divide between the parties a little bit. That's gotten to be such a wedge over the last 8 years. I think we really need to work on trying to bring people back together. And I'd like to focus more on common issues that are important to both sides, and try to find a resolve that, you know, is a middle ground that we can hopefully use those subjects to help bring people back together. Just being out at the events and talking to the people that I've been talking to, there's a lot of Democrats that don't seem to be too happy with the Democratic Party anymore, and that are looking for another option. Same thing with a lot of the Republicans. A lot of the Republicans seem to feel that the Republican Party hasn't been doing their job, you know, that a lot of them have been lazy, is the word I keep hearing. So that was a big reason why I decided to run as independent. I can still represent the Republicans, you know, the conservatives, the constitutionalists, libertarians, all of that. I kind of align with all those people. But it doesn't automatically alienate me from Democrats that might be looking for something different just because I have that Republican label. I've been hearing over and over and over again that people really kind of are looking for a third choice. That they don't want to have to just choose between the Republicans and Democrats anymore. So kind of hoping that as an independent, that that might help, you know. And I know there's some other politicians that are kind of looking at going the same route, and a couple of the organizations that I'm working with are looking at trying to offer a third party. So
there's a core group of younger or even more newly elected representatives and senators in the state legislature between the House and the Senate that are far more traditional in their values. Have you reached out to any of them? Have you had conversations with guys like Jeremy Munson or Eric
Mortensen?
Huh?
Eric Mortensen?
Yeah, Eric and there's another one that just could. It's my day off. You're lucky I'm even speaking. So,
no, I personally haven't. I met Jeremy Munson down at one of the events that we were both at for the Roxland Cows. I've got a lot of respect for him, and I really like what Eric Mortensen is doing. Ton of respect for that guy. But no, I personally haven't gotten in any conversations with them about anything yet.
And the reason that I asked that question is, people are initially going to hear you and say, well, for one, look, he's wearing red, and everybody knows what that means. And,
right.
But they're also going to hear you, and they're going to hear family values. They're going to hear traditional Rocks and Cows, Minnesota, 19-year-old cook kind of values. And they're going to just automatically assume that you're somehow aligned with everybody in the so-called conservative Republican Party. And you're over here going, look, my values are my values, but I'm an independent because, and you mentioned there are people from both parties who feel completely and utterly forsaken, just abandoned.
Right.
And that's part of that risk that I was mentioning, folks, that he's taking a risk here. You don't run as an independent in Minnesota and have a big party network backing you up. This is self-funded. You know, I would imagine for the most part, everything's been self-funded so far.
Yes. Yep.
And so this is a self-funded, self-driven motivation. This is what we need, Minnesota. We need people like this because this is coming from the heart, and the heart can be troublesome. It can make us say and do things that can be confusing to people at times. But there's also something else in it, and there's a reality. There's a truth that comes from responding to how you're processing things internally. That is both intellectual and emotional, and it's invested, and that's what I've liked about Josh from the first time we communicated to the thing, and from the things I saw him posting. He's invested. And that's not something you can say about the vast majority of people in the state of Minnesota. They're holding office at the Senate level and the legislative, or the House of Representatives, and definitely not in the gubernatorial arena right now. You're listening to a person who's sitting here speaking to me, has no reason to be wasting his time talking to some guy with a 252 subscriber base. I've grown 2 in the last 2 days, by the way. In having this conversation, other than he knows that there are people out there looking for an answer other than what we've been getting. And so if you got that person in your House district or in your Senate district who, no matter what you say, they don't seem to have time, or they always pass you off to somebody else, maybe it's time you start to consider whether or not that affiliation, you've been a Republican your whole life, you've been a Democrat your whole life, it might be time, just hear me out, to start thinking about people like Josh. And don't say that an independent can never win. This is the state that gave us Jesse the Body Ventura, people. So if Jesse the Body Ventura can be governor of Minnesota, Josh Swedlund can be governor of Minnesota as an independent. And I guarantee you, he's not going to walk around talking about alien people living under Minneapolis controlling everything.
No.
So I might have just lost the alien people vote for you, Josh. So
I think I'll be okay.
so there again, independents can win. They can win in Minnesota, but it's going to take people saying enough is enough, enough of the status quo, enough of the I'm voting Republican, even though they don't represent me anymore. And I'm going to vote Democrat because I always have. Look, traditional Democrats in Minnesota don't look anything like the Democrats running for office in Minnesota anymore. Traditional Republicans, for the most part right now, they've had to go out and form their own caucuses within the House and within the Senate so that they can have a voice, because some of these people have held office for over 20 years. They're so ensconced in these positions that they don't want to lose them. They want to rock the boat. And they'll look at business owners and say, and Josh has probably heard this, and they'll say to business owners, here's the deal, you just got to go along, otherwise the governor is going to nickel and dime you to death. I know you've probably heard somebody say that, Josh.
Yeah.
That's why we have to look at people like Josh. So I'm going to ask him a couple more quick questions. I want you guys to listen to him, hear how he answers them. And then I'm going to think of some really hard questions to ask him in future months as he's going forward about things like policy and platform and what he's going to do to actually represent Minnesota. Because those are questions that we're going to want answered, and two, he's going to have answers for as he goes forward. So once again, go back, re-listen to this, watch our awkward interactions because our internets have not been working very well today. The interwebs are not our friends. But go back and watch and listen to him. He's human, he's real, he's down to earth. He doesn't have these polished answers that are off of a cue card or off of an index card that he just can whip out. He's speaking off the cuff and he's speaking from the heart, and he's managed to not swear at me once. I don't normally get that from people. So Josh, what one thing as a husband is going to help you to be governor?
Having a supportive wife. I mean, she's been a rock star through all of this. I mean, it was our first anniversary Friday, and she was perfectly happy to drive 2 hours and 15 minutes out west to Linden, Minnesota to support Haven's Garden, that little restaurant that decided to try to stay open. So we spent our first wedding anniversary driving out there, you know, so I could do a political appearance. So she's been very, very supportive, and this is just the best back I could ever have. So
people, did you hear that? The thing that's going to qualify him the most as a husband to be governor is a supportive wife. He didn't once mention how wonderful he is. All right, that right there should be enough. Now, this is the other got you. As a dad, what is going to be your greatest contribution to being governor of Minnesota?
The biggest thing that, as a father, I think it's the fact that being that I'm Joe Nobody, nobody knows my name, and I decided to do this. If I can pull this off and succeed, it's showing him and all the kids that you can pretty much do anything in this country if you set your mind to it, and that American dream really is real. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that I'm going to be able to offer him out of this. It's just that inspiration.
He's not doing this for fame and glory, people. Did you hear that? He like, I'm going to show my kid, you can do it. And for those people who say, well, it's easy for you to say, Mr. living in rural white Minnesota. No, did you hear him? Anybody. If you set your mind to it in the United States, in places like Minnesota, anybody can succeed if you're willing to work for it. One, thank you for meeting with me today Two, thank you for every rally that you've attended. Thank you for every one of those drives, to you and your wife, that you've taken to go to these small towns and go to these small businesses to support them in their defiance of unconstitutional, tyrannical, despotic, I could label it all sorts of things, orders. Thank you for putting yourself in a position to be embarrassed. I mean, let's just be honest. You put your hat in the ring for a political office, somebody's coming after you.
Right.
They're going to discredit you. They're going to look for a disgruntled employee. They're going to look for somebody that you said, hey, you look nice today, and try to turn it into some sort of sexual assault. That's just the way it is. And so you're putting yourself out there, and that says a lot about you. There again, as a small business owner, knowing how hostile the political environment can be today. I'm going to say goodbye. Once again, everybody, please go check out Josh. He's on Facebook. He's now going to be featured on my YouTube channel. That'll make him famous. And he's vocal. So check him out. Watch this interview.
Can I add one thing to this?
No, it's my channel. You can't do anything.
No, I just like to say to anybody out there that's interested, yeah, please follow me. And I am trying so hard to get back to everybody, to communicate with everybody. Anybody that comments, leaves a question, anything, I'm doing my absolute best to get back to everybody. I mean, I'm giving out my phone number for people to call me and ask me questions on the phone. So anything you want to know, any concerns you have, please reach out. I will get back to you. So that's very important to me, to keep that open line of communication, because I can't represent you if I don't talk to you and I don't know what's going on. So that will always be very important to me, to stay in touch with all of you. So thank you.
And thank you for watching. Share this, especially if you're in Minnesota. And you know what? If you're not in Minnesota, share this. Maybe you guys can find a Josh in your neck of the woods. I'm certain there are places right now like Kentucky that would like to not have another Bashir. So you know who I'm talking about.